Okay. I have 7:02. I want to be good stewards of everyone's time. So if we will start with the opening prayer, and Judge, I'm going to ask you to lead us. You will be.
Let us pray. Father, we thank you for today. We thank you for giving us life that we may live it to the full, to the extent of what you have blessed us with. For your bountiful blessings today, we say thank you. God, we thank you for the NAACP, and we thank you for their efforts in saving our children, because your word says children are a heritage of the Lord. And God, we have to treat them well because you have loaned them to us. And God, we thank you for the veterans that have served our country, those who are domestic and abroad. And God, I thank you for their sacrifices. Many of them gave their lives and their time. And God, I ask you now to add special blessings to them and to their families. God bless everyone that is on this webinar tonight. Let it be edifying and let it be informational so that we may run with the vision of the NAACP and effectuate change. Bless our president. Bless our state president who is with us today. Give them long life. Satisfy them with long life. This we pray in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Judge. Um, my name is Marcia Ellison. I'm president of the NAACP Fort Lauderdale Broward branch. And during the month of November and December, we have our general membership meetings on the second Thursdays rather than the fourth Thursday because of obvious reasons, the holidays. But we wanted to continue on our series of saving our children. We have heard tidbits of things that have been happening in the news of our children. And so the people that you see on this call are ones that are our leadership team, our partners, who are working to make sure that we do everything we can to help our children, save them from the juvenile justice system, because there is not much justice in the juvenile justice system, and in particularly for children of color. I want to start out with with our state conference, Florida State Conference president, our national board of directors member, Dr. Adora Obianweze, for some comments, because whenever she must have to listen to me whine about kids, what they doing to them, what's going on the daily, and we have there's no one more concerned about what's happening than our state president, our leader of the Florida State Conference, NAACP, none other than our own Dr. Adora Obianweze. Madam President, if you will open us up, we'd be greatly appreciative. She may be having some issues here. We will, as soon as she's able to get on, we will go with that. And in the meantime, I on the daily also call our public defender. And I say our, now just I want to bear in mind that long before he was even thinking about public defender, being the public defender, as a matter of fact, he was thinking about not being the public defender. He wasn't really interested in politics, just interested in justice for all of us. And so we have worked together for over a decade, making sure that things that work as best or justly as possible for our community, or for all in the system, certainly, but certainly for children. And so the people's public defender is going to tell us a little bit what he's seeing with our children here in Broward County. And with that, Attorney Gordon Weeks.
Thank you so much, Madam President. I appreciate that warm welcome. I want to acknowledge State President Dora Nawazi as well. I've always been a supporter, always been a guide for what is right when it comes to the NAACP in the state of Florida. And also good ties and good steward to Judge Holmes, who is an incredible advocate. It's a pleasure and a wonder to have her with the NAACP as legal counsel. to guide the efforts of the NAACP locally to challenge the things that need to be challenged. And my dear and near Jasmine Shirley and Sonia Burrows, love you both, always being in my corner, giving me guidance and wisdom, and sometimes a ear check when I need it. That's always important to have folks that will tell you what you need to hear when you need to hear it. But I'm going to tell you one thing I'm seeing that's very frustrating is our children are grappling with some very, very difficult issues now that they have re-entered into school. We as adults have to recognize that we have now experienced house arrest. Every one of us know how painful and how detrimental house arrest can be, because we've all endured COVID-19 and the restrictions and the limiting the contact and trying to minimize going out in public. And for a whole 18 months, we were confining ourselves to house arrest, not having any social contact. And what we recognize that we are social beings. We need interaction. We need to be around people. We need to talk. We need to hug. We need to kiss. We need to cry, because that's important for who we are as people. But what we realize and what I'm seeing is that we have not really looked at the impact of COVID-19, not from a healthcare standpoint, but from a mental health standpoint on our children. We have had a number of professionals, and I read the paper all the time, and I'm seeing that professionals all across the world are walking away from their jobs in the healthcare industry, in the legal profession, engineers, dentists are deciding that, hey, I'm going to do something different with my life. COVID has caused me to put things in perspective, and I'm going to change careers. What does that mean? That means that people have did a mental inventory of who they are, what makes them happy, and they decided to make a shift to go pursue something else to make them happy. Children haven't had that opportunity. Our children have also endured being on house arrest for 18 months, not being able to ride their bicycles, not be able to go roller skating, go to the mall, go to the movie theaters, meet with friends. And the only interaction that many of them had is via Zoom, on social media, and via telephone. And I'm going to tell you, social media is not healthy for our young people. They need to socialize in person, to be in school physically, because they model good behavior. Teachers set expectations. They set a level of structure that children crave. They may not like it, but they crave it because they need that structure. And when we haven't had that due to COVID-19, children have been bottling up a lot of frustration, lots and lots of frustration, not knowing how to go over to the pretty girl and ask her out or ask for her phone number, or to go over to the guy that you like and leave a note on his desk. Those seem like simple things, but they're important for the maturation of children. They're important for children to understand and learn how to socialize with each other. So now we have had our children evolve into TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, as their means of communication, Snapchat, and it is not healthy. The things that they're doing, the challenges that they're coming up with are counterintuitive and counterproductive to their good health. Most of them are just doing it for attention, because that attention is something that they crave and they have not had it. And as a result, children are now re-entering back into a school environment where there is structure once again, where there is expectations as to behavior, expectations as to how they can conform themselves to their fellow students and teachers and administrators. And we're finding that they're acting out. They're acting out like children act out. Some of them are suffering from the post-traumatic stress of being confined on house arrest for 18 months, and it's manifesting itself with all kinds of negative behavior, where they're posting things that are inappropriate on social media, where they're saying things that are causing the ire of law enforcement because it may be perceived as a threat, where they are not interacting well with their classmates because they may be perceived as being bullied or ostracized by their friends. We have to do a little bit better. Our kids are really, really suffering. And we as adults have to acknowledge that we suffered. And even though we are capable of enduring, every one of us has friends and family members that have had great difficulty with the pandemic. I know I've counseled many of folk that said they just couldn't do it anymore. And you have to just take your time and talk them through it. A lot of depression that folks are suffering, a lot of suicide ideations of being coped up in their house for a long time. And children are suffering with that as well. So we have to do a little bit better. And I can tell you, I'm seeing it as the cases are coming through the court system. We have seen an increase in the number of threats on schools. And traditionally, the schools that we're seeing these from, and I'm sure Dr. Osgood is going to opine on this, have not been the schools that we have traditionally seen this type of stuff coming from. And there's a reason for that, because children are now reacting. They're reacting to the pressures of isolation. And we have to really take that into account. We have to try to put supports in place for children. I'm going to tell you one of the things that I have to commend the school board for. For many, many years, the school board has launched campaigns around bullying, has launched campaigns around suicide and suicide prevention and identification, launched campaigns around mental health to raise awareness, not only with children, but with the parents. Those are very important. When we don't have children in school and we're all remote, it's difficult to have that same messaging, to create that same environment. And we have to recognize that a school is sometimes the next set of parenting that many of our children will have. And we have to embrace our school system and support them around messages of suicide prevention, mental health awareness, anti-bullying, because I'm seeing a number of children that may be finding themselves in the way of the law have perceived notions of being bullied and are acting out with that, bringing weapons to school, because they are fearful of other children. We have to support the school district and encourage them to get these campaigns back up and going, and encourage children to embrace them, and also encourage parents to embrace them. So with that, I can talk all night, Madam President, but I want to make sure that Dr. Osgood has an opportunity to give her perspective, because what I'm seeing on the juvenile justice end of it is the outcome of the manifestation of the pressure, the depression, the suicidal ideation, the bullying, and as a result, the children are acting out and then they're getting arrested. So those are my perspectives. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about this, and I'm looking forward to this dialogue tonight.
Thank you. Dr. Osgood is everywhere all the time. And so I see she's on the road and they're going to one of her 85 meetings that I've seen. I've seen several of them, and she's on the road. So we appreciate, we know that you're busy, but never too busy to share with us what's happening to our children, and in particular in our schools. And with that, our own Dr. Rosalind Osgood.
Thank you, Madam President, and I'm sorry for my tardiness. My granddad actually, his roommate had to call the paramedics and rush him to the emergency room. So I'm actually in the parking lot at the emergency room. The doctor says his breathing is off, so they are doing what they need to do, and was kind of happy that I stepped out for a moment. So I apologize for my tardiness, but thank you so much for your vision and your leadership and continuing this conversation. And as we talk about our kids tonight, I'm going to try not to get emotional. I don't know that I have words to express to you what we're seeing in schools. Our fabulous public defender, Mr. Gordon Weeks, thank you for your commitment to our children as well as the NAACP. But brothers and sisters, we're in a crisis right now. Our kids are not doing well. Many of us are not doing well. We had the murder of Mr. George Floyd that all of our children witnessed publicly on TV. Then we went through Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, just all of these acts of violence where people of color ended up dead. Those things have an impact on our children. They hear us as we have the disputes in the home with mom and dad not getting along. Many of you have stepped up and you've taken on children in your family and relatives that you've moved in, that you're caring for to keep them out of the system. And with an additional 2 or 3 children in the house, you are stressed out and just trying to put food on the table. Many of our kids through this pandemic are grieving the loss of parents, grandparents, sisters, brothers, friends, neighbors. Many of their friends have relocated because the parents could no longer make ends meet living in South Florida with the cost of living being so high. And it is impacting our kids in a multiplicity of ways. And they are acting out. They come to school, they yell, they fuss and cuss more than ever. And I'm going to just be clear. What we're seeing now, it's happening in our schools. It's happening to Black and brown kids. They're bringing guns and knives to school like never before. If they bring a gun that is not loaded, through our state attorney's office, we've been able to work with them with counseling and not have them be arrested. There's a piece of legislation that was passed after MSD, the Marjory Stoneman Douglas tragedy, Bill 7026. And that legislation gives some laws and directives to school districts as to how we have to respond to kids when they act out in schools. Our principals are overwhelmed with behavior threat assessments. So we're seeing social media posts, not to just shoot up schools, but to shoot specific people in schools. Many of us saw the horrible news report of the 3 students that plotted for a couple of days to literally murder another student at Miramar High School. All of those students, the one that was murdered and the other 3 that plotted the murder, were in like the top 10, 20% of the class. So when you think about these kind of occurrences, we oftentimes think that it's the quote unquote troubled kids. All of our kids are troubled right now, and many of us are troubled. The district has put in a lot of mental health services. We have psychologists and psychiatrists at most schools. We have behavior therapists. We just launched a campaign to deal with the social media threats. We understand that some of this have come through TikTok, where they were literally having campaigns on TikToks like tomorrow is Slap Your Teacher Day. Our kids are on social media. They're seeing these type of things. They're doing dares and they're doing all of these things. Some of them are doing them because of peer pressure. And others of them are doing things because they have different thoughts, different pains, different grief and agony that they're dealing with. And we just expect them to just go to the next day like nothing ever happened. In our community, that is a cultural problem that we have. Somebody gets shot, somebody has an issue, we fuss, we do what we gotta do. And then tomorrow we act like it never happened. That's not good for us physically or mentally. And it's certainly not good for our kids. So now we see kids bringing guns to school. 12 or 13-year-old brings a gun with an extended barrel loaded to school. So if the teacher says something he don't like, he's gonna take care of the teacher with the gun. I ask myself, where did he get the gun? He got the gun because somebody had the gun and they didn't lock the gun up. I'm for Second Amendments. I think that responsible people have the right to bear arms, but they have to be responsible. I don't think anybody that's not in the military should have an AR-15 though, but we're seeing this play out. And I've been trying to do videos and speak out and try to just employ you to please have conversations with our children. Don't let them sit in the rooms for hours on video games, because everybody died in the video game, and then in the next episode, they back alive again. Help our children to understand that TV is for entertainment purposes only. What they see on TV is not real. Many of them are enticed by celebrities. We know that when we use Facebook, a lot of y'all older people, us younger people use Snapchat and Instagram. We put on there what we want our life to be, not what our life actually is at this time. And it's all a fantasy. It's fake. It's not real. Social media gives us this illusion of an audience. We think everybody is watching us. It's our instant way to get attention. Kids are literally fighting in school because somebody liked something on somebody's Instagram page and didn't like something on their page, or somebody put something on their Instagram page and they assumed that they were talking about them. These are issues and problems that as a community, we have to come together and address. We can't kick the ball to the school system, to the governor, to other folk. We as a community have to begin to have strong dialogues, to work with our children, to understand what they're thinking. We have to be honest with them. You know, those people that they're dating now in high school, they're not gonna marry those people. We have to have honest conversations with them about love and dating, where they don't get so emotionally tied to a person that when a person quit them, they want to kill the person. You know, I don't know about y'all, but I done had a few people quit me and it broke my heart. They want me back now, but that door done closed. But we have to step up and we have to pay attention to our kids. We can't just cuss them out, whoop them, and tell them they dumb and stupid. Because then they're gonna go to school next day filled with anger and rage, and they're gonna act out. People have been asking me, why am I leaving the school board? I'm leaving the school board because the hostile environment in Tallahassee toward public education is just unacceptable to me. We had some very good people representing us in Tallahassee, and they've been fighting for a long time. We need people in Tallahassee that understand how schools work, so that when they are trying to put laws in place that are implementation nightmare, we can give a voice to it. We've been in COVID, and I can tell you what Tallahassee has done, mandating a lot of administrative reporting, holding funding from the school district. It has caused a fiasco in school districts across this state. All school districts across the state, they have massive unemployment. We don't have enough teachers, enough substitutes, enough bus drivers. People in district offices are now back in class. People are complaining that they're counselors and they have to do lunch duty. We're doing what we have to do right now to create a loving and safe environment from our kids who were disconnected from a very stable, loving environment for over a year. We can't just expect them to come back to school and never address the isolation, address the time they spent not being around their kids, or the loss that they've had, the attrition that takes place, and the loss of learning that they had. We have to pause a moment and say that we've been in a pandemic. It's caused mental harm to many. Some have even died. It's caused physical harm, and we have to have these conversations with our children so that we can try to guide them in their thinking. This is the time when your child does something that you have to give them a measure of grace. Certainly, I'm for discipline. I'm one of those moms that will punish and whoop my children, and still will now, even though they're 31, 32, and 33. They know I'll still give them the business. But we have to take a moment to have the conversations to understand, how was school today? Did somebody say something or do something to harm you? What are you struggling with? You know, what's going on that you're not telling me? Or, you know, what choice did you make that might not have been the right choice? Because we've all made those choices. If I can see a video of a principal and an AP standing out by the bus and a girl go up right in front of them and hit another girl and start a fight like they're not there, that's a problem. And then parents come to the school and they go off on us at the school. You know, I love your children. I can't love them in the way that you love them, but I love them. The people in the school, we love the children. We don't want them in trouble. We don't want them fighting. If I'm at a high school and 3 fights break out at one time, and then when you try to stop the kids, they keep going and they start stumping each other. What is that rage and aggression coming from? We have to do a better job in our homes and our communities with taking the time to talk to our kids. There are mental health services through the school. We have a whole department, it's free. Broward Behavior Health Coalition. They have a lot of money that they got through the American Rescue Plan. I'm on that board, and they're having a problem reaching kids of color because we don't want to take our kids for the counseling, for the mental health help they need because of the stigma that it is carried in our communities. A lot of us could have benefited from counseling and things like that to support us, to help us with our thoughts and our thinking. You know, I was a kid that was bullied in school. I've been 5 feet 11, size 9.5 shoes since 6th grade. And I wasn't that bright. So I remember being called Miss Banana, Miss Pancake, Big Dummy, all those names. And I'll be honest with you, I also watch wrestling every Saturday at 12 with Gordon Soley. So I started learning how to use the bionic elbow and the figure 4 on some of those kids to shut them up. But then that got me suspended from school. It got me labeled in school as a bad child. My grandmother and granddaddy couldn't have those conversations with me about my behavior and why I was acting out. They thought if they put food on the table and kept clothes on my back, then everything was going to be okay. And then at some point, I found marijuana. It gave me a great release. And then that grew into other things, using cocaine and other drugs that landed me living homeless on the streets because I didn't know how to cope with the pain of what was being said to me by different mean people, or just how I felt that I was struggling in school. I just couldn't get it. Now, as I got older, I got it. And I was able to go back to school and get the 5 degrees, but I really, really struggled. And being raised with grandparents, they just couldn't relate. And when I look at the services that are available to kids now in the school, through the community, the various mentoring programs, it's so many things that are different now that can help our kids. And I know you're saying, you don't understand, I'm working 3 jobs. I don't have time to take the kid to counseling. I don't have time to do this. But somebody does. Maybe you don't go to work. Maybe you miss, you know, the $50 an hour for those 2 hours to help the kids. There's programs that can help. Family Success can help you with that light bill if you have to miss that money to take that kid to counseling or take that kid to a mentoring program, the Boys and Girls Club, where they can be there with other kids and have the supports they need. We all of us that have children, grandchildren in our homes, in our communities, we need to assess ourselves and see how we can level up to help our children because they are in a crisis right now. And we live on eggshells in the school district. You don't know what the next notification is going to say. I was in a school board meeting Tuesday night, a long school board meeting. And around 6 o'clock, this text came through that a custodian who was working the night shift had just tried to kill himself at a school. And it could be any one of us, brothers and sisters. We have to create environments where we can talk on the real, share our troubles, our problems, and we can help each other get through this very, very difficult time and moment. And if you are a person of faith, whatever your faith is, please pray for our children, those individuals that are working in the school. It is not okay. Everything is not okay. It is a lot of trauma, a lot of mental illness, a lot of stinking thinking, and a lot of stress right now. And we have to do our individual parts. And then we have to come together as a community and do what we need to do so Gordon don't have to see our babies. You know, he don't have to try to intervene. We have to prevent them from going to those extremes. If they make social media posts about blowing up a school, fighting or hurting somebody at school, it is against the law. And Gordon can come back and explain to you the particulars of the law. It's out of our hand. They just can't play like that. They can't do those things. And if they're that angry that they want to take somebody's life, that's not right. That's never, no matter what somebody do to one of us, we should never get to a point where we think that it's okay to just kill that person. And this is the kind of stuff that we're seeing coming from our kids. And finally, if you have your gun, lock it up. You can't hide it in the house from the kid. The kids knows it just like I was. We gonna look through everything in the house when you ain't there. We gonna know where everything at that you think you hiding from us. My grandparents would buy my Christmas stuff early. By the time they put it on a tree, I don't like surprises. I done looked and I done found all their hiding places. They know if you have it in the suitcase, you have it stuck in the hat box in the closet, in your shoes. And I know you tell them don't go in there, don't bother that. But kids, we gonna do what kids do. We gonna go look. When you tell us don't, we gonna go look when you ain't home. And then we're gonna sneak the gun out of the house and we're gonna take it to school. And intentionally or unintentionally, somebody's gonna get hurt, because if they get caught with the gun, then it's nothing we can do. They get caught with the knife. At some point in the near future, the school board is gonna start doing random wanding. We don't have a choice because there's so many weapons, knives and guns that's being brought into the schools. We just can't risk something happening and some of our babies or some of the people in the schools or somebody getting killed, and we have another mass shooting or stabbing at a school. So I'm hoping what we're saying to you tonight touches your heart in a way that you will start interacting with the kids that you're around differently, from a measure of supporting them and trying to help them. It's the reason why they bring in the guns. It's the reason why they bring in the knives. It's the reason why they're so angry. And calling them dumb and stupid is not going to get to the core of the problem of what's going on with them. But together we can identify those problems and connect them. We've been fighting, Marsha, the NAACP, been fighting for years for us to have certain services in our community. And now we have those services and we have to take advantage of them. Thank you again, Madam President, for this very difficult but needed conversation tonight. And thank all of you that mentor in schools, that do your part, but I'm asking you to do just a little more. Our kids are worth it.
Thank you, Doc. And let's hear from your Sarah, our own Dr. Adora Obianweze. Let's hear from you, Madam President.
Thank you, Mrs. President. Thank you so much. And I want to thank each one of you. You are members of my family. You don't know that, but I depend on you, and I depend on us coming together to talk about the most important thing in the world to many of us, and that is our children and our schools. We are finding now that teachers are running out and running away from the schools. They can't find people who want to go to the classrooms. The teachers are having so many problems because we have got to do a better job of a couple of things. The first thing that the NAACP has told us, and our president, Marsha Ellison, in many years has led this particular area of NAACP, and that's civic engagement. We've got people in office who really don't want to be there, certainly not for the reason that they should be there. We are having too many problems with elected officials putting rules out in the schools, putting rules in our textbooks, putting rules in all of the places they can put a rule. And ultimately, they found a rule that would kill us. They've got that rule and they want that rule to stay there. They don't want us to have vaccines. They don't want us to have schools and places to go with teachers who are waiting for us. We've got classrooms just filling over with children. The teachers don't even have hardly chairs for them to sit in. I'm not exaggerating, by the way. I'm talking about many school districts across the nation, no particular one, because our school districts share their problem. They share the problems. And we are in total agreement of Dr. Osgood and Gordon Weeks and everybody else who has spoken. This can be cured if we decide we want to do it. And I wish we would do it. The NAACP says we've got to go to the polls and put people in office that really will help us to straighten this out, that want to be there. We don't want to see Dr. Osgood leave. She needs to be in our school district at head of the board. She knows what she's doing. Her skills are in place, every last one of them. And so are the others in our school districts. We have got to fight for them to stay there. But in order for them to stay there, we've got to put other people in there who believe like they believe and are willing to work with them. So I want to be sure not only teachers that we're talking about, but everybody who works in the school district, no matter what their role is, they need to be able to go to work and feel that they will be able to go home alive at night. All of them need to feel that way. We should feel that way. And we should feel enough to go to the polls. I'm still scratching my head as to why we did not vote. Because, you know, if the Black community went to vote, do you have any idea who would be sitting in the chairs right now? Do you have any idea? There are enough. We have counted the population. Trust me, the population of Black folk is high. We are not a few people. We may be a few percentages below, but those numbers are there because every time it's used, we knock them out. So I'm hoping that as we talk tonight, the most important thing is our children. We must do everything we can for them from top to bottom. So this discussion that we're having and that we're going to have will bring solutions, because actually everything we said is a solution. You know, we got mentoring programs and everything you want to talk about, but if they're not working, if they're not used. So I'm hopeful that as we further this conversation and share the answers, that we make a commitment of putting administrators, school board members, all of the members who are in elected officials who work locally as well as statewide and nationally. Let's put these people out and put in people that we know, like Dr. Osgood and Gordon Weeks, are going to work. We've got to know this. The NAACP is ready. The NAACP is got everything we need. There's not anything you can ask for that the NAACP can't answer and be able to work with us to get it. Be sure you understand what the NAACP is qualified to do. The real issue for us in the NAACP is we can't get you to work with us either. And we're trying to figure out why. We in the NAACP have a responsibility to work with every group in the community. We in the NAACP have a responsibility to ensure that everybody gets a chance to vote, and we fight to keep our voting rights that we're losing slowly because we aren't using them. So I really am excited about this. I'm excited every time I come, and I'm ready for us to get this conversation moving.
Thank you, Madam President. One of the things that I have been doing for probably the last 6 or 7 years is working with the district as a member of the Disciplinary Matrix Committee and the School Code of Conduct. Although I haven't heard from them, so I think they've thrown me off because some of the members, some of the staff did some things that I think that was not in the best interest of the children. And then, I called everybody, and the last call was to Dr. Osgood, and some conversation was had, lively conversation. So I may not be on, but one of the things we did was we talked about when the child is accused of a particular offense, and let's say was or promise or otherwise. It talks about, so okay, you're just, one of the things that you need to figure out is what's going on with the child. It has to be an evaluation. Something is going on, and so there's an important space for social workers in our schools. And I know that one of the things that the superintendent Runcie and Dr. Osgood worked on tirelessly was getting social workers in school, because they're counselors and that's their role, and then there's social workers and then their space. And so there was a whole bunch of you know all of our social workers at one time, I don't say all, but a great deal of them were sent out to MSD, and the children on the east side were left in need. There was a long waiting list. But let's and I believe Mr. Campbell, your background is in social work. Is that correct? So if you tell us the importance of having social workers work with our students.
Well, first off, I want to say thank you, Madam President, for having me on with this illustrious panel to talk about this important need. One of the things social workers provide are assistance and somebody to lean on, to talk to in those times where we are having those difficult conversations. We as social workers tend to come in with a certain type of approach, usually a trauma-informed approach, where we are aware that the presenting issue is traumatic to that individual. And we come in with that perspective of how can we help this individual in dealing with this trauma, but also moving forward past that trauma. And so social workers help to add that perspective, that calm to their environment. We are that connection where if a parent is having trouble, or if a child is having trouble and there's a disconnect between the services that are being provided, the social worker can come in and readily identify what is going on through the situation at hand. For example, if I see a kid who is struggling, who was top of the notch in their class, and they start struggling in class, as a social worker, I'm coming in and looking at what added effects has changed in this child's life within the past month, the past day, or however long the child has been going through this process, this change. And so we not only look at the individual, but we look at the individual in their entirety, their environment. And so what social workers provide is another type of lens in support in looking at how do we get the help that we need for this child. And so for me, I tend to like to use a person environment technique where when I'm helping with an individual, I try to get them back to their environment, try to get them back to a place that they find a calm and a center. And so many of that may be utilizing some type of breathing meditation techniques and things of that nature. But as it goes for getting that person to what I call homeostasis, they're finding their balance. It takes a magnitude to really take a step back and see how can I get this child to be better, a better them. And sometimes it just takes listening and paying attention to what's going on in that child's environment.
I know that oftentimes children will talk to people other than their parents. It might be a coach, it might be a social worker. And I know, Doc, that we put a lot of emphasis on the district, but sometimes y'all all we got. And so when I know that I've been told by different administrators about, well, we just can't do it, but you kind of sort of, kind of have to serve as the bridge in many cases. And so the importance of finding that resource, maybe if you can't do it, but you can point us into the direction of where you have to go. And I know the importance of social work, and I know, when Mr. Campbell talked about trauma, I mean, resources went out, and I'm not saying that they should not have. I don't know if it should have been all of them, but they went out to MSD because of all the trauma that's going on in this state. But we are experiencing trauma on the east side as well, and trauma looks different depending on who the individual is. I mean, trauma for me might be my lights off. It might be that, it might be that we're hungry, or it might be we're facing eviction. It might be any of those things. I mean, you have the last count, I heard, Doc, that prior to the pandemic, your district probably had 3,000 to 4,000 children that were homeless, and I know that you all have to look out for that community as well. So I don't know, do they get? Are you still providing services? I don't know what you have as for those children.
Thank you, Madam President, and thank you, Mr. Campbell, for that insight as a social worker. And I totally agree. Part of the way that we were able to turn around those 12 F schools, Madam President, is Mr. Runcie implemented something called a Sparks program, where we had social workers in every school. And what we found is that 20% of the kids were absent from school 30% of the time. So once we were able to identify issues like whose turn it was to wear the shoes, we can go to the church and get shoes donated. Sometimes it was small things that families just needed support so that they could get the kids to school. We have the HEART program, which is the program that services the homeless kids. And I think we're at about 4,500 of those kids now, and that number fluctuates. And those are the kids that we have identified. We have many kids that are living, their mother and their father and them are living with other people. So they don't consider themselves homeless, but they are, because they don't have a residence of their own. Since MSD, the district has worked very hard to make the trauma services, the counseling services, the psychology services available across the district. Our issue is many of our parents will not sign the consent form for the children to get the services. And as we talk about this, Madam President, I think that we all have to be honest from a cultural perspective. We have to stop just taking things and acting like we're okay. Our people were enslaved for 200 plus years. Women were raped, beat, men were beat, traumatized, and then it's just supposed to be okay. Many of our people were harmed in a huge way through World War I, World War II, and even Vietnam. I know my dad went to Vietnam. He was a student. He went to Vietnam and he came back. He was never the same. PTSD just took over his life, but we never addressed these things. And many of our children are having PTSD based on something that has happened to them. We have molestation and rape that takes place in homes and in communities. And we expect for girls to just bounce back and deal with it. And what we're seeing with our kids now is that they can't deal with these things. And we have to be honest, as painful as it is, that these things are happening. And we can't continue to sweep them under the rug and say, whatever go on here, it should stay here. We have to talk about these things. We have to hold perpetrators accountable that's doing these acts, and we have to take action. A lot of our kids are involved in human trafficking. We think that human trafficking is that they kidnap the kids, but many of them go to school, they go home and tell the parent they have a job after school, and that job is to go be a sex worker somewhere or to trade favors for sex. And then they start showing up with new clothes and new shoes. The parents never go check the job out. They never follow up to see where they're getting this money from. And now the kids are caught into something that they don't feel they can get out. And because we're so enticed by rich America that we want all these things, we want the blame, we want the name brand this, the name brand that. those things are very enticing for our kids. So we have to be honest. It all starts with a place of truth. And as parents, where we have not done so well, I'm a person in recovery. At some point, I had to say to my kids, my addiction put you in harm's way. There was times we had to sleep in the car. I have an addiction. I have a health issue of addiction that caused me to make bad choices and bad decisions. I apologize to you for that. And I'm sorry for the pain that my issues caused you. I also took them to counseling so that they can talk, they can vent, they can process, they can deal with the issues that my issue caused them. And then they were able to move forward and be somewhat healthy and not be traumatized. So as we address this issue, it's going to take a lot of personal decisions from us. My soror, one of my favorite sorors, Madam President Adora, spoke about voting. We have to put people in office that's going to care about people, that's going to prioritize people, that's not going to just look to put laws in place to make issues worse and to target some groups. It is an all-out attack on public education right now in the midst of a pandemic. We should be outraged and going to the polls and voting out people that don't care about people. It doesn't matter what political party you in. If people are not caring for people, government is for the people, by the people. They don't need to be in office. If you think it's okay for kids not to wear masks in school, but you're pushing Regeneron treatment, so if you get COVID, go ahead and get COVID, then just go get you a shot that's going to help you not die or not make it be so bad. That is ludicrous. We normally focus on prevention, but we don't go to the polls and vote. So we keep getting people in office that's not going to prioritize our kids and our issues. And that's why I'm going to the state level. I'm just tired. I can't take it anymore with this attack on public education. No plan. I'm at the hospital now with my granddad, who's 87. He can't navigate Medicaid, Medicare, all these doctor's appointments and all this stuff that he have to do, keep up with all these medicines. Our elderly people shouldn't have to go through these things alone and try to figure out. We should have a system in place that cares for them. They've spent so much in taxes. They've given their life to serving and making a difference in this world. And when they're elderly, we have a responsibility to care for them. So we have to do a better job with our kids, because brothers and sisters, they are our future. And if they never amount to anything, then what does the world look like? We have an obligation to make the world better. And we do that by having these conversations, taking advantages of services that we have fought for to be in our community and in our schools, and working together when there's a problem to say, hey, this child is struggling. They won't listen at me, but maybe they'll talk to Mr. Weeks about their issue, as you said, Madam President. Get them to the person that they will talk to that can help them deal with the trauma and the pains of life. Life hurts, y'all. We know it. And we can't just keep acting like it don't, especially if you're a Black or brown person, because you're catching it on every end. So we have to make sure that we're doing what we need to do for ourselves to be holistically healthy. And then we have to put our kids in positions that they can be holistically healthy.
Okay. Let me ask Gordon Weeks. So obviously, when the children, if they are with you, with your office, then it's too late for the arrest piece. But is there any common denominator between all these children, or some of these children that are calling in threats, or taking weapons to school, or is there anything that you found? I'm assuming that there's some type of evaluation that is done through your office that determines, figure out how we got there. Is there? I don't understand the process, obviously, but I'm sure you try to figure out what has caused this problem. So how does that work, and what kind of things are you finding?
That is one of the most frustrating things that I have to encounter. By the time they find themselves in trouble with the law, the arc of their lives will forever be changed. And that is a reality that we have to embrace. Our goal, our efforts, everything that we can pour into has to prevent them from getting in trouble with the law. It has to raise a red flag so we can offer the assistance. Because once they get into the court system only knows one thing, and that's how to punish. That's how to give a scarlet letter of a conviction. That's how to, put people in prison. That's how to criminalize someone and institutionalize them for the rest of their lives. So we have to do what we can to prevent that. But I want to go back to something that was so very important. That was the power of the vote, the power of elected office, the power of the constitutional office and the authority that you serve in these offices. I don't take it lightly at all, my role. I am the public defender. I'm here to make sure that I defend everyone from those abuses in the system through the work that we do by representing each and every one that we represent. But in being the public defender, I also got to look at all the other criminal justice stakeholders. I got to look at the courts. I have to look at the sheriffs and the chiefs of police. I have to look at the state attorney's office and see how they are navigating their role and their function. And I can tell you one thing that I find very troubling is that we do not pause for a moment after a child finds themselves in the criminal justice system, that we need to pause. There is no reason to rush off to grand juries. There's no reason to rush off to direct file. These children are not going anywhere. They're going to remain in custody, but we need to pause because we need to look at each child individually, find out what's going on in their homes, find out whether they have long-standing mental health issues, find out if they've been the source of bullying, find out what's going on and put that in a proper perspective before you make the choice to treat them as an adult. Treating a child as an adult forever changes them. The court doesn't see them any differently. They can be a child, but they will be an adult in the eyes of the law. I mean, they will be punished to the fullest extent of the law. So we have to pause and take a moment to recognize that they are children. And although they may have engaged in some very, very difficult things, that we have to unravel how they got there before we make a decision on how we move forward with that child. Because if we don't do that, then what we'll do is just be reacting and reacting and reacting. We'll find a whole nother generation of children institutionalized and criminalized and lost because we didn't take a moment to pause and figure out what was going on with that child. And I'm not saying that we minimize their behavior. I'm not saying that we discount what they were engaged in, but I'm saying put it in a proper perspective so you can properly weigh it to determine how to move forward. That is the responsibility of these offices. That is the responsibility of the constitutional officers to recognize the importance of our most valuable commodity, which is our children, and just move judiciously rather than expeditiously. Just take your time. No reason to rush. And that's my frustration because time and time again, children are finding themselves, and we're seeing, reports in the paper, reports in the news. Child's been indicted, child's gone to the grand jury, child's been direct filed, children with mental health issues, children with all kinds of, trauma that they've endured. You can't unravel, you can't unring that bell once it's been rung. So I'm asking that we all do vote. I'm asking that we pay close attention. I'm asking that we look at, the strength that it takes to hold these offices. You can't be afraid when you take this office. You can't be afraid to stand up to folks that are going to come and challenge your decision making. Dr. Osgood led that school board through the most challenging times and was not afraid. Did what was right for our children. Took all kind of criticism and all kind of ridicule, but she's not scared. That's what leadership is. So if you take these roles, you got to be willing to stand in the paint. You got to be willing to take a blow every now and again, but you got to also be willing to give one too. So I want us to remember these times. You know, we oftentimes got short memories. Got short memories. And we have seen a new dynamic at play in politics. It's called the promise me politics. Promise me the world, and I'll vote for you. But when it comes time to deliver, I don't see you. You nowhere to be found. We can't play that promise me game anymore. We have to make sure we have people that are willing to stand in the paint and take a blow, but also give one as well. Give one for the right reason, give one for our children, stand strong for our kids. And if we do that, we'll be better in the long run. So I appreciate this conversation. It is very important that we refocus our attention on our kids, especially in these times that are trying. But I want to say one thing, and this is how I'm going to end on this issue. All of our kids are not bad. No matter how difficult the times are with our children right now, our children are good kids. They're the most valuable and loving thing that we have in this community. And if they do a wrong on one day, that don't mean we don't love them the next, okay? Sometimes we just gotta let them grow a little bit, make a few mistakes. Just make sure they don't make a big mistake that causes them in trouble with the law. All right, you gotta love them and know that they're going to sometimes do stupid things, like we did stupid things. It's tough to talk about what's going on now, but let's don't cast all and condemn all of our kids, because you know people like to run with stuff, and not all the kids are bad. Let's just start locking them up. No, we're not gonna lock them up. That's not the key. That's not the solution. The solution is let's love them up. Let's support them up. Let's strengthen them. Let's give them the guidance they need so we don't have to have them coming in the criminal justice system. But thank you so kindly for this conversation and this dialogue.
I'm going to go to Mr. Campbell, but I want to just say, you know, it doesn't matter. You know, Roosevelt Walters, who's on the call as well, used to say, we used to talk about, you know, police brutality, police misconduct all the time, and he would say, I don't want a black cop's or a white cop's foot on my neck. I just want to be treated right no matter who they are. So when you have these, I said that to say we have, you know, we laugh and we celebrate it, Wakanda County, but if the black politician does the same thing that the white politician did, hey, we might as well have had him. At least I feel better because I would expect that. So we have to hold everybody accountable. And so when you hear the NAACP criticizing those folks such as the state attorney, I did get a message like, why are you? Because if you're going to do right, you're going to do what you said you're going to do, or you're not. And we always say we have to call folk, hold them accountable, whether they're a black politician or not. You have to be held accountable. We talked about direct filing. There was going to be a difference in this administration than the last. That ain't happened yet. We're about 1 year in. We got the same results with this state attorney as we did as the last state attorney. We're waiting for change. We just ain't seen it yet. We're waiting for change. We're waiting for the accountability. We're waiting for the campaign promises to kick in when it comes to our children and direct filing in those issues. We're waiting for the accountability when it comes to diversion. There's an issue where some of these kids who are calling in threats and getting into issues are not necessarily being given the same option and services as the kids, as black kids. Black kids are not faring as well as what I'm being told. We've got to find out and make sure that all kids are treated fairly. And we will find out and get the data to ensure that that's happening. And if it's not happening, then it's going to be what it's going to be. Madam President, you had something before I go to Mr. Campbell? You have to unmute.
Right.
Yes.
There we are. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Great. Okay, one great thing I wanted to add, thank you. We really must think about all of our children that we are allowing to be put into special education. I have an article that I will send to you, Madam President, to share. that came out today that talks about that. The fact that our children are being placed in special education, and they are not special education children. They're not qualified to be there. But because of their behavior or because of any little thing that could have happened, they're being placed in these special classes. And we are finding now that the law is changing. It's about to change, and it's going to be putting more of our children into special education if we don't stop this. So we really, you talk about being in crisis as we did earlier. That's important. Don't leave out our children that being placed in these special classes, because most of them in there don't qualify. So we need to know that right off the bat. Just because they don't talk like you or walk like you or write like you think something is wrong, you got to be joking. That is not true. Yes, all of our children are smart. Mr. Reese is absolutely correct, 100%. We just got to let them show you what they really know. Thank you.
Thank you. There is so much stigma around mental health services or talking to somebody, because it's not a good thing for us to be, that means you're crazy if you go do this, or that sort of thing. How do you suggest we deal with the stigma around counseling or mental health services, even if you're talking about, and both the educators here will tell you, we think our community, when you say ESE, we all think that means something. That doesn't mean it doesn't mean the same thing. Not all ESE kids are, mentally handicapped or any of those things. It means different things to different people. So how do we deal with the stigma of receiving some type of mental health services in our community? Mr. Campbell.
Well, we deal with it by ignoring the comments around it and seek the help that we need. If I see somebody that is struggling to get up, I'm going to reach out my hand and try to help them. And so when we are dealing with something like stigmas, we look at it, brush it off as that's just a name that they're trying to label somebody on. But at the same time, recognize that if I get this help, I'm gonna be a much better person than I was before. And so we must, as a community, not allow these names to affect us. One of the great things that we can say that COVID has done is allowed us to normalize what mental health looks like. People have been self-reflecting and really looking at, how do I need to take care of myself? How do I put on my mask so that I'm able to do what it is that I want to do in life, whether that be to help somebody else or find a new path for myself. And so the stigma behind mental health is just what they call it, a stigma. And so it's something that does not stick. And so we must begin reaching out our hands and asking for that help. It's no longer cool to sit there and watch our loved ones sit there struggle while we're snickering in the back, laughing at, oh, look at this crazy food. And so we must begin figuring out, how do we as a community come in as a coalition, as a collective unit, and support this individual, and guiding them to get into help, getting the help that they need. There's definitely different ways of interventions. We see it happen all the time through addiction, when somebody's suffering from addiction. When it gets to, in the beginning, it's all kiki ha ha, but when it gets to that point where it's severe, what do we do to reach out for help? And so that's what we need to do with our kids. One of the things that I've been noticing with some of the kids that I've been working with, is just recognizing that, what is going on is they don't know what's going on with them. Depending on the age, they can't tell the signs. They think we look at them exploding and they don't see nothing to it. They don't know when they're feeling down. It's trying to recognize and giving a name. Okay, you're angry right now. You're sad. If you're telling yourself you want to harm yourself, you're depressed. That's not a good feeling. And so we need to have that conversation, and bringing in people with specialty to actually understand and see what is going on will definitely help that. And it's by no means are you crazy in any such way in reaching out for help. If anything, it makes you a smart person, because if I'm struggling, I'm gonna reach out for that help, because I don't want to sink. I want to stand. And if I need to get a helping hand to help me stand, so be it. But at the end of the day, I'll be standing. And so we as a community just need to get over the stigma of mental health. And so one of the things that that is also being done to really help us get over that is really, you're starting to see a lot of therapists really stand up and really come to the forefront. Coming into the communities and talking about mental health and getting that help, and where does it begin, and where do I seek help, and how do I know the telltale signs? Not being able to sleep is not a good thing. Being anxious all the time is not a good thing. And you need to recognize that when your body is off kilter, you need to be able to recognize that. And once we recognize it within ourselves, we're better off to help our children in recognizing that. Because what's happening is our children are watching us and how we move and how we handle situations. And so if we're sitting here saying that we're all fine, but we're crying every night, every morning, every time of the day, then no matter what, our children are seeing that, and they're looking into that. And so it's important for us to really look at ourselves and really ask, am I doing for myself what I would want my children to be doing for themselves if they were struggling? And so that's how we begin to start breaking those barriers.
Dr. Osgood, how do we relate to the parents to let them know that it's okay to not be okay? Just do something about it. Just seek help. It doesn't mean that you're crazy. It doesn't mean that that you're a monster. It means that you're just not okay. So how do we get that message to the parents to say, it's natural for all of us to be struggling. Everybody struggles at one time or another, but it's okay to not be okay, and tell people, as long as you tell people about it and recognize that there is, you're not alone in that. Kids generally feel like whatever situation they have, nobody else is going through that but them. And so how do we help our children?
I think conversations like this is very helpful. Many of us are on social media. You don't have to be a professional to talk about the way you feel or to speak truth to power, but just taking a minute or so, whether it's a TikTok video, a Facebook Live, to talk about these things, talk about what you do when you struggle. People that know me, if you call me and you say you having a good day, no, I'm not having a good day today. I'm feeling this way or that way today. And I'm going to talk about it, so that at least I'm venting, I'm getting it out. And a lot of times somebody will say something to break that feeling or to help you navigate that space. Or they may say, girl, I'm feeling the same way today. So then you know that you're not alone. And I think, as Mr. Campbell said, we have to start being honest with ourselves about life is not okay every day. And it does not mean that you are crazy because life is not okay. Life is hard and difficult. It's a challenge and a struggle for all of us. One of the ideas that I have is to try to get some organizations together. We do campaigns around the census. When we're running for office, we do campaigns. If we can get resources and pots of monies together where we start doing, mail out things to homes and parents, social media campaigns around this, where the children see people that they recognize and know from the community. It was something that I got to be a part of during COVID, where I got my vaccination early. When I started looking at the data of the number of Black people that were not getting vaccinated, I had people saying to me, How can we reach the Black community? I said, well, they're not gonna come if y'all put up something to give shots, because they don't trust it. You know, so we did a campaign where I started speaking about trusting me. I had the vaccine, you know, get the vaccine. Other people were a part of that campaign as well. And people began to respond, you know, where they felt more comfortable using our churches to get out these messages. A lot of, whether it's a church, a synagogue, a mosque, people listen to their faith leaders. We have to bring them into this conversation so that they're aware of the crisis that we're in, and then they can speak from their platforms about how to address this problem. This is something that every leader in our community, certainly every elected official should be interested in. Our newspapers, a lot of times we talk about, you know, our Black newspaper. These are messages that they should be sending out for free to help our kids, or where the resources are. So whatever we can do to get this message out, to keep having these conversations. We're going into Thanksgiving. Talk about over Thanksgiving what's going on, how people are feeling. You know, we got to do a little more than eat that good turkey and dressing and collard greens. We're going into Christmas time. You know, maybe we talk to people and decide to give them a spa or something that they can just relax, that's different, get them out of their environment so that their minds can have another sense of awareness, a sense of freedom. Just little things that we can do, even acts of kindness. You know, those of you that have children in your home and in your influence, when is the last time you gave them a hug and told them that you love them? Many of our children never get hugs. They never get told that we love them. We just show it to them. But sometimes they need to hear it. They need those hugs. I don't care how big they are. I have a son that lives home with me, and sometimes we're working and we don't see each other for 2 weeks, and I'll go in and wake him up. And he hates it that it's 1 o'clock in the morning. I'm waking him up. I said, you got to get up and give me that love. I just need to hug you today. So we got to take the time to do those little things that don't cost us no money to do. And then we got to engage other leaders, whether it's pastors, our Black newspapers, that have platforms that they can help share this message and get it out from a perspective of loving our kids. You know, all children are a blessing from God, whether they're born inside of wedlock or outside of wedlock. They are God's most precious gift to society. And it shouldn't matter what political party you in, what neighborhood you live in, all of our children should be something that you care about. So we can start with little simple things, with just expressions of love and support to our kids. And that will begin to break down some of the barriers, that they will feel like we care for them, we love them, and they can talk to us about the things that they're dealing with.
One of the things that I'm told we're seeing more of here in Broward is Baker Acts. Judge Holmes and I have been working on that. We are, in full disclosure, the NAACP Florida State Conference, of which we all are a part of. We're in litigation in Palm Beach County school system for theirs. But let me just tell you, you know, it ain't no joke here in Broward County. And so the judge and I will work to continue to gather data. And Gordon, if you can share a little bit about what you've seen, since we're talking about mental health and how that affects all the different things that affect our kids. One of the things that happen is Baker Acts from our schools and from our courts. Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam President. It's like, you know, whack-a-mole around here in these parts. You address one issue and then another issue pops up. And that issue is the prevalence of the uses of Baker Acts with minor. The Baker Act, so that we're all operating on the same page, is an instance where a law enforcement officer or a professional seeks to involuntarily commit someone because they're a threat to themselves or others. Place them in a receiving facility where they're observed for 72 hours, and then they can petition the court to hold them there after that for in the period. A doctor is supervising them and overseeing their care and their mental well-being, and in some instances will release them from that facility prior to the 72 hours or sometimes very shortly thereafter. What we're seeing is a heightened utilization of Baker Acts. Numbers are skyrocketing. through the roof. And what's troubling is that many of these children do not have an advocate that is there to speak on their behalf because of the way that that Baker Act process is worked. Parents can stipulate and agree to have them remain in the facility. It is a very difficult facility to be in. I've had an opportunity to visit and observe those hearings, and I can tell you it is heart wrenching to observe a child that is in crisis, in trauma, enter into the facility, and then some days later, is so highly medicated that they're unable to communicate effectively with people around them. That is further bit of trauma and a further bit of problems that you are imparting on that child when you use psychotropics to the extent to medicate them when they can't communicate. We have to keep our eyes on what goes on in these Baker Act facilities. We have to keep an eye on how children are being treated. And the reason why we have to do that is because, I had some experience many years ago with young ladies that were placed into a very high-end mental health facility. And the reason why I had some experience with them is because there was a riot within the facility. And, it was all on TV because the police were called. They went in there and we were trying to, get control of the facility. And one of the officers uh, hauled off and punched a little girl, 15 years of age, full frontal, and knocked her down. And that was pretty traumatic. But it was because of that use of force, because of that extreme use of force, that it caused myself and folks in my office to look a little deeper in what was going on in that facility. And what we learned is that the girls in that facility were crying out for help. And they were crying out for help using the only means upon which they knew how to get people's attention. And that was to cause a disturbance within that facility, hoping that someone would come to their aid and to their rescue. And when we found out and when we talked to them further, we found that they were subduing young ladies at night, tying them to a bed, and injecting them with sedatives that the girls then coined booty juice. Many of these young ladies had already been abused sexually and what other forms of abuse, and the trauma that they would describe having being tied down and sedated from the back with this cocktail. And when they would wake up, they would not have any memory or recollection of the night before was incredibly traumatic. So I say that to say this: if we don't keep an eye on our children, if we don't keep an eye on these facilities, if we do not know what's going on, then all kinds of trauma could be taking place. And I say that because I've experienced it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Seen it. And we cannot allow that type of stuff to occur. So when we have this hike and bake, the utilization of Baker Act, and I see that children go in and then a few days later they're unable to communicate effectively, I'm concerned. I'm concerned because there may be a desire to use medicine rather than therapy to address the issue. Maybe the easier way to deal with it, to just sedate them and knock them out, rather than talk to them, address and work them through their issues. So I applaud the NAACP. I applaud the NAACP and taking on this fight in West Palm. I'm looking forward to how you navigate this issue throughout the entire state of Florida. It is an area that we have to bring some attention to. It's an area that we may have to bring some legislation to make sure that children are properly represented throughout that process, to have a second set of eyes while working them through that whole Baker Act process. Um, because it is I'm incredibly fearful of the system, because the system won't love you the same way as the people around you will love you. The system doesn't know how to love you the same way. Sometimes the system only knows how to use you as the meat in the machine to grind you down. So we have to make sure we protect our children in this Baker Act process.
And so, and as I said, full disclosure, Doc, we are checking the data for Broward County School District. If we find that the numbers are which we believe to be too high, or if we're going to look at some of these cases of Baker Acts, then just know that the NAACP will do what it has to do to protect children from Baker Acts in Broward County School District as well. The litigation will not stop at just Palm Beach County. Just, it's not threat. It's just facts, because we've got to do, and I know you don't have any problem with it, but I'm just sharing with you that is where we are when it comes to saving our children, and children in Broward are certainly at the top of our agenda as well.
Madam President, the data doesn't lie, and I'm not for any system that's mishandling kids, whether it's the school system or whatever. We have to address these things. We have to look at the data. I know in the school systems, in Broward particularly, we have really had to work with our schools, because sometimes a principal may feel that a Baker Act is a method rather than arresting a kid. So what we've said to them is get a person that is trained clinically to help in that decision making. When you have all of these different laws and you're trying to keep children that you feel may have acted out but should not be in jail out of jail, then you use another method that you think is protecting them from jail that could actually be doing more harm to them. As I heard our public defender talk about the jail system and the girls and what happened to them, we see that happening a lot, even in the jailhouse and in prisons with women, where they're incarcerated and then they're raped and they're used for their bodies, where people offer them things or take advantage of them. And those are certainly things that we have to speak about. We have to bring to the forefront. When we're about children, nobody is left off the table. If it's an institution or organization that's mistreating children in any way, we have to address it. We can't say that children are our priority, and then because we got friends in certain places, we don't deal with those places and them mishandling our children. So I'm on board with the NAACP. I thank the NAACP for your legal team, yourself, Judge Holmes, Madam President, the state level, and how you weighed in on the mask issue. When it's an issue that's going to cost people their lives or trauma, we have to weigh in, and nobody's off the table. I'm looking to go to Tallahassee. I don't have a problem with being held accountable. I communicate, I say what's going on, whether it's right or wrong, because I understand that as a person, I can't change those systems. But if I share information with my community, I believe in our community. I've seen us do some great things together. And a lot of times when you're in elected office, you have to understand that you're only strong as your capacity to empower and build the community. Because there's going to come a point in time with you standing alone, you can easily be taken out. But if the community is informed, they're engaged, they know what's going on, now you got a whole army fighting. That's one of those things in our culture that you learn early as a child. If you come for me and we got to fight, I'm going to bring my mama, my aunt, my aunts, my cousins down the streets, biological. It's going to be us. And I think we have to continue that. If somebody's wronging kids, we have to address it, and nobody's off the table. It doesn't matter if the leader of the organization is black, white, purple, blue, or whatever. If they harming kids, then we have to address those issues. We have to get institutions, especially government institutions, back to where they are prioritizing people, and that is the key.
And Judge, if you will share a little bit about our litigation in Palm Beach County against the district, and I would, when it comes to Broward, I think we should probably look and see if they're being Baker acted from a particular courtroom as well. And I don't know what we'd be able to do about it, but if we don't do nothing but put them on blast, if there is a particular judge who finds that solution, then we will see what we have to do about that. But if you'll share a little bit about that.
Right. Thank you, Madam President, and to our distinguished panelists, Mr. Weeks and Dr. Osgood, and to our state president, President Nwizi. It's an honor to be here. I tell Madam President Ellison, it's always a pleasure for me to be able to join in with the NAACP, and I like a good fight. And this struggle is real. The Palm Beach litigation remains. I have not heard an update from Mr. Boyd or Ms. Jackson as of yet, but I'm certainly going to be emailing them because I need to let them know. And they are with the Southern Poverty Law Center. The NAACP partners with a number of civil rights and other law firms that are civic minded in order to litigate these matters and these claims. There were some abuses in Broward when that lawsuit in Palm Beach was filed, but we didn't have the data because at that time there was really no reporting requirement. And Mr. Weeks mentioned the statute. He talked about, you know, providers like healthcare providers, school principals, law enforcement has the right to look at a child and decide to Baker Act them. And then most importantly, judges do. There are some judges that make a ruling and they have their clerk writing out the order for the child to be Baker acted. So by the time the child is removed from the courtroom, they're on their way to a facility. I always say, follow the money. Most of the facilities that they have been transported to are privately owned, but they're paid by the state of Florida. So they have no incentive to find that the child really doesn't need to be there because they can keep them for 72 hours. So depending on what they're making, it's a moneymaker, it's a money mill using our children. And I found out the stats from the Palm Beach litigation that of those children that are being Baker acted, 46% of them are Black and brown children. So that's a high and inordinate amount of children being Baker acted. When I was traveling, I got a call from a friend of mine that is sort of in the know about what's going on in terms of Baker Act and doesn't want to lose their job. But they told me that the number of children being Baker acted has gone up in the state, and they're attributing it to the pandemic. And so, you know, we started off this conversation tonight about our children, you know, guns in schools, calling in bomb threats, plotting and planning, and then killing classmates, and then tossing them in the bushes like they're garbage. Something happened during this pandemic. I have a friend that I talked to who is a psychologist, and she and I were talking, and I told her, I said, you know, when I travel, I get so angry. If it's not a flight attendant, it's somebody in the airport. You know, I see a porter just, you know, throwing my suitcase around. And I said, they're not doing it to the white people. Why? And so she looked at me and she said, you know, racism is a mental health issue also. It's not been in the DSM-3 or whatever the newest model or edition that they're using, but that tires Black people out. Whether we say it or not, we see the disparate treatment that we receive. And I don't care how educated you are, you can tell when you are being treated differently. Then I'm in line at Publix and I see with the white woman ahead of me, the cashier is very gentle with the items and putting things in bags. My stuff, they just toss it in the mouth. You know what I'm saying? What are you doing? You'll break up my stuff before I get it home. So, you know, the fact that we have to deal with that, and we've been dealing with it for a long time, but we're at the breaking point. And there's only so long that we can deal with this. So we're going to keep our eye on the Baker Act. And Mr. Weeks, I did see that bin that you had in your office behind you, and you said you had about 1,100 cases in there. I am certainly interested in knowing about that. So I'll be getting with you as soon as you're ready to talk to me. And as Madam President Ellison will give me the green light, you know, I'll certainly begin investigating and then give her a report as to whether or not Broward County should be added in a suit. And look, the legislature passed some legislation regarding Baker Act. Senate Bill 590 was passed. Some parts went into effect July 1, and the rest of the bill went into effect October 1st. But the only thing that they required is that you notify the parents or the next the guardian that the child is being Baker Act. Before that statute, parents would send their children to school and the kids wouldn't come home. They called the police. Because it's a black child, or they ran away, no big deal. These children were Baker acted from the schools. They went in the morning and didn't come home at night. And parents are, they running around crazy. Like, what happened to my child? They're in a facility, all right? And most of them really don't be there. They're just angry. And as you said, some children are just hungry. Some children have not been hugged. I was watching the television show the other night, and the man said to his mother, he says, "You've never hugged me and told me that you loved me." And her response was, "I fed you, didn't I?" And you had a place to sleep. So some parents, in their mind, if you feed the child, you put clothes on them, and then that's your reasonable service. And then one last thing, and then I'll shut up because I'm just loving the NAACP. You all have unleashed me. The bench inhibited what I could do, but you all have unleashed the tiger, and I'm prepared to bite if necessary. But the second place that we need to look to is the church. For many years, the church has sat silently when it comes to mental health issues. The pastor just say, "Come on, let me lay hands on you, and pray." And I'm a firm believer in prayer, but the church does not handle mental health issues as well as they should. And I'm not indicting every church, but I'm just saying a lot of preachers don't preach about Elijah, who was a depressed prophet. He was a powerful man of God, but he was depressed. He went and hid in a cave. Okay. He went through bouts of depression. So, we know about it, and we're going to have to talk about it. And as Mr. Campbell said, who cares that people know you? I'll call somebody before I do crazy stuff. I know some people, and they talk me off the ledge. They let me just talk crazy for a minute. Then they tell me, "You okay?" And I say, "Yeah." Sometimes all you need to do is vent and get it out, because and there's a book out that says Black girls must die exhausted. It's just exhausting navigating through life. Women have it doubly so. If you think Black men are catching it, Black women are catching it also, and doubly so, because we're women and people don't expect much of us. So this is important. The community needs to buy into this. We need to get to our young people, our children, before the court system. I agree with Gordon. It's a lost cause once you get to that court system, because you got too many opinions. And then you have a judge who may or may not know anything about Black people. They'll tell you, I got Black friends. They have no clue how to deal with Black people. I can say it. I was on the bench for almost 24 years, and I know who the ones are to look at. So I'm going to be looking through those papers that you share with me, Mr. Weeks, and I have in my mind which judge it is that is Baker acting our children. And I will go after them. There's nothing holding me back except the good Lord himself. So thank you, and I appreciate this discussion. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. I want to. I'm sorry, Madam President. Is your finger up? Was that the church finger? You had to unmute.
Thank you so much. I want to just say I am enjoying this so much. I could stay here literally all night. I probably would be by myself if I were here all night, though. Let me tell you what I'm about to unveil to our state conference. We're having a meeting, executive committee meeting on this coming Sunday. And this is what I'm interested in. And I'm asking you all to think about it. And I want feedback when we meet again or whenever we can. I believe that we have got to begin to put focus on prenatal care. Prenatal care. We have got to start teaching and training our teachers and our parents and everybody that needs to know, which is everybody. We have got to talk about child development, what to expect and what not to expect and what to do. But it's got to be done early. That's why I said prenatal. Parents who are pregnant need to also have this process worked with. We need to have them along with teachers and everybody in the community. Let's start talking about prenatal work. Let's start talking about pre-kindergarten. I know that some schools have pre-kindergarten, but not every school. Monies are not put into prenatal and pre-kindergarten. The problem is by the time a child gets to kindergarten and sometimes pre-kindergarten, you will see the cases where they're on their way to prison because they do not stop putting that pressure on them and turning children off. Children don't want to be in school. So when they get there, they express not wanting to be there. So we've got a lot of work to do, but I think we don't start early enough. And so I just want you all to know that I would love to hear us think about that, talk about it, so we can get a handle on this early enough. I think we're getting to the kids too late, is my point.
I agree with you, Madam President. The last data I saw, disciplinary data from Broward County School District, showed a steep increase in elementary school disciplinary issues. And so we started to look at middle school, but then we realized that we needed to back up to elementary because of the large increase in the younger children as well, the babies. And then our fight became, let's not treat the babies the same way as we treat the middle schoolers and the high schools. That's why, to the educators are on, that's why we have 3 different matrices, because you can't expect a 6-year-old to behave the same way as your 12, 10, whatever, and high school student. So a lot of people say, well, that doesn't make sense to to have 3 matrix, and there's a reason, there's a method behind the madness. And it wasn't that these are people who are clinically trained, understanding how behavior and the need for early intervention works, and how children's behavior manifests their issues going forward. But you're absolutely correct. As we wrapped up, will certainly include Dr. Osgood and her family in our prayers. I see she had to get off. But as we wrap up, I wanted to go to each one of our panelists to have 2 minutes to tell us about the issue that you were brought on to speak and how you would suggest we move forward. Mr. Campbell.
Well, thank you once again, Madam President. One of the things that we need to move forward is just asking for help when we know that we need the help. And then we also need to begin to recognize that we are struggling, that it is tough, and it's okay to reach out for help. And I believe for too long, whether that may be in our lives or in generational, we've been putting ourselves on the back burner, and it's time for us to put us at the front where we belong, and beginning to take care of ourselves, beginning to put on our masks, and helping the next person to find their strength and beginning to walk what it is we call a healthy life. It's okay to take time out for yourself. It's okay to go for long walks. It's okay to say, look, I just need to take a step away and then come back to it. It is fine. It's perfectly okay. We just need to actually take those measures and stop saying that we are going to do it and start doing it.
Thank you. And I don't know, Mr. Campbell is certainly an NAACP. I see that backpack. I can't see that funny looking writing on there. What does that say on that backpack, Mr. Campbell?
Oh, that's Kappa Alpha Psi right there. I'm
Okay,
a member of Kappa Alpha Psi.
oh, thought it was just on the desk. I didn't know, Madam President. I didn't know if he knew nothing about it. I thought it was just on the desk, behind it that it was left over from something else. But
Yeah.
okay,
Oh yeah. Oh no. You see the colors. Right.
okay.
It brightens up the office.
Okay, and Mr. Campbell, I know that you are seeking office, and if you just know that if you are, and obviously we don't know who will win, but if you are successful, let me just tell you, you have some big shoes to fill. Whoever gets that, I have Representative Bowles on speed dial. And so whenever we have issues, the information flows back both ways. I had to do a deposition on last Thursday, for HB1. And what I had to, we are suing the governor, and including we're also sheriffs in several of the counties as well, Duval, Leon, and Broward, regarding the anti-protest bill. And one of the things I had to in Discovery is I had to share emails regarding HB1, and I had even forgotten and didn't realize I had emails from the staff of Representative DeBose when the bill was initially submitted, when it was filed, as it changed, as it morphed throughout the whole process. So, I said that to say there's always a lot of conversation, and there must be, between the community and our state leaders, or any of our leaders, and certainly that office would be no exception. So we would certainly have expectations of you should you be successful on January 11th. That won't change. Thank you, sir.
No, it will not change. As a matter of fact, you have my number on speed dial. The current representative has my number on speed dial, and I will definitely be present and available, no matter the conversation.
And you'll learn that I don't do intermediaries. So I couldn't tell you who Bobby's staff was. I've seen him at a couple of Christmas parties, I think, but I don't know them, and I don't care to know them. I just don't do it. I learned that from President Nweze. We don't do intermediaries. Our President Roosevelt used to say, well, I would meet with the janitor if the janitor could make a decision. So, if you can't make a decision, then why would I, bother meeting? So, thank you, Mr. Campbell. Mr. Weeks.
Thank you, Madam President. I'm in closing, I just want to re-emphasize that, this is a difficult time that we're in. Our kids are going through difficult transition back in school from 18 months of house arrest due to COVID-19. And we're all going through that transition. We have to be patient with them. We have to recognize that children are going to explore. And sometimes that exploration may find themselves in the things that they probably shouldn't be in. But we got to support them. There is a lot of stress and turmoil that goes in the transition into adulthood. I look at my boys as they are, walking around the house in the background while I'm talking, and I know that we gotta love them up because it's difficult. It's difficult. They did not have the same experiences that we have. They went through a whole year and a half doing remote school. It's unprecedented. Stresses of that is unprecedented. And now moving back into a schoolroom environment and they're acting out, we got to give them a little bit of grace, a little bit of time to transition. So let's support them. Let's guide them. Let's offer them the guidance, the mental health counseling, the suicide prevention discussions, and more importantly, it's talking about bullying. Bullying is so many different levels of it. There is the active bullying, there's the passive bullying where you basically don't let them into your group, and you don't have these little cliques. And let me tell you, for kids, cliques, being on the in crowd is like, very important. Wearing the right shoes, the right, t-shirt is very important. Being acknowledged on social media with a like or a heart is very important. And it's different. It's different. And we have to recognize it's different for our kids. Their social interaction has been crafted through an algorithm that has hacked the way that they see and view the world. That algorithm is so crafty and so calculating that it can shape or change their perception of reality. We never had to deal with that. We knew who our friends were. We saw them, we went to play basketball with them and things of that sort. But their reality is different because of social media. And we have to, as adults, recognize that. It is so much more impactful than we could ever imagine on their psyche, on the way they perceive things, on the way that they mature, that we have to protect them. Sometimes it is very overwhelming trying to fit in. Remember those awkward days for all of us? I looked at myself in this camera and I saw this gray hair and I'm like, wow, what happened? I still feel young on the inside, but I'm like, wow, I guess I'm not on the outside anymore. Um, but I remember back when I was a child, and I remember when I was a kid, I remember how awkward that phase was turning into an adult. And I remember, being angry all the time. And I remember not really fitting in and not really understanding, what I was going to be or who I was going to be. And I remember trying to figure out if I was going to be, the kid that just followed the pack, or was I going to be the kid that was outside of the pack. That's what our kids are going through now. But they're going through it all with a documented history that's available to the whole world to see on social media. Is different. And we have to give them the grace of those pressures of that algorithm hacking their mind, hacking their perception, and hacking their hearts. Because their pain, their hurt is so much more deep. When we had a girlfriend or a boyfriend break up with us, it hurt. It hurt. But now they have that magnified by so many more amplitude because of social media. So let's protect them. We can't change social media. We can't change the internet. That is going to be with us, but we have to acknowledge what it can do and make sure we talk to our children and support them so they can have a better grasp on dealing with social media. So with that being said, um, Madam President, State President, Judge Holmes, and all my other friends that are on this call, please pray for us, pray for our children, support our children, and let's give them the guidance, but more important, the support to sometimes make mistakes, clean yourself up, pick yourself back up, and get back in the game to become better. Thank you, Madam President.
Thank you. General Counsel Holmes.
I said it all. Thank you, Madam President. Good night, everybody.
Okay. And certainly last but not least, our state conference president, our Florida State Conference leader, our board of directors, our national education chair, President Adora Obi and Wizzy.
Thank you. Your check is in the mail, Madam President. I tell you, I really, really am delighted about our discussions. I miss these. We only have them once a month. We could use these discussions every week until we really, really talk it all out. But I am really proud of each one of you and us together. Our children are important, but we've got to try to get on the same page as it relates to what role each one of us wants to play so that we can bring these ideas and these thoughts in a way that we can utilize them and say, oh, you know what? I got that idea from what we were doing, Madam President, talked about on Thursday night. that's when we know we got it going, when we start using it in our environment. So thank you so much for allowing me to be here tonight. I'm always loving to come to my Broward County.
And I want to say thank you to our leadership team, to Ms. Sonia Burrows, to Ms. Jasmine Shirley, to Alice Hughes, and others that are on. This is just the beginning and kind of just a snapshot of the work that we are doing and we will continue to do as we unleash our General Counsel, Judge Holmes. And with that, Judge, if you will pray us out of here.
Madam President, I think Bridget Edwards joined us. Minister Edwards, are you on?
I tried to get her over, but she declined.
Okay. All right. Father, we thank you for this gathering tonight. And God, we thank you for the issues that were discussed. Give us ideas. Give us the wherewithal. Give us strength and give us partners, the people that want to come in and help us. As you showed Paul, the man from Macedonia, saying, come over here and help us. God, send the help. Send what we need. That there be no barriers to what the NAACP needs to do for our children and for the adults who are members. As we leave this place, we will never leave your presence. Go with us, guide us, stand by us, give us peace and prosperity. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Good night.
Bye.